When Megan hands her husband Alex a list of strict bedtime rules, it feels more like a corporate memo than a marriage. But instead of arguing, Alex mirrors her structure, and what begins as compliance becomes a quiet, tactical awakening that shakes the foundation of their relationship. What happens when a power move backfires? I was brushing my teeth when Megan walked in, holding a piece of paper like it was a court summons. Her expression didn't show anger, just something tighter, colder. "You're going to read it," she said, "all of it." I turned off the water and looked at her. "Read what?" "These are the new bedtime rules." She sat down on the edge of the bed like she was about to present a company strategy and began reading aloud. Rule 1, no screens after 9 p.m. Rule 2, no discussing work in the bedroom. Rule 3, no initiating intimacy without prior verbal consent. Rule 4, no snoring. If you do, relocate to the guest room immediately. I let out a laugh, small, mostly confused. "You're serious?" She didn't look up. Rule 5, bedtime is at 10 p.m. sharp. Rule 6, no tossing and turning. If you can't sleep, leave the room. It wasn't a conversation, it was a declaration, a verdict. I sat down, unsure if this was some elaborate joke. We'd been married 5 years. We'd had arguments, sure, but nothing that ever ended with a document. "You made a list of bedtime offenses?" I asked. "I made a list of standards," she snapped. "You don't see anything wrong with how you act at night? With how little respect you show?" "Megan, this is a marriage, not a military bunker. And since when do you get to write all the rules?" She didn't blink. "Since I'm the one who's tired, since I'm the one carrying the load, since asking nicely hasn't worked." I didn't respond right away, not because I didn't have words, but because I was trying to figure out what this was really about. It wasn't about snoring. It wasn't about phones or pajamas. It was about control, and she'd already decided she deserved it. I wasn't a perfect partner, but I was the one who woke up early to walk the dog before work. I kept gas in her car, remembered her mom's birthday, ran to the store when she forgot things. I was the guy who tried to avoid fights, not win them, and yet here I was, being managed like a problem employee. "So what's next?" I asked. "Do I sign something?" She crossed her arms. "This isn't about control, Alex. It's about respect." "No, it's not. Respect is mutual. This is enforcement." She looked away. I picked up a pillow and turned toward the door. "I'll sleep on the couch." "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not. I'm just complying with Rule 9. Avoid unnecessary tension at bedtime." I left the room without another word. The couch was lumpy, the blanket too thin, but I didn't care. I couldn't stop thinking about the paper. 13 rules, each one more specific than the last. Color-coded, categorized by severity, even including violation frequency in parentheses. This wasn't a reaction, it was a system. Rule 7. No unsolicited commentary on clothing choices. Rule 10. Do not initiate conversation if I am already in bed. Rule 11. Do not expect physical contact if I am mentally depleted. I read the list 3 times, not because I was confused, because I understood it too well. Megan didn't want a partner anymore. She wanted quiet, control, predictability for herself. There wasn't a single line in there about me, nothing about my needs, my stress, my sleep. And I realized something important. If I'd written the same list with her name on it, she'd have called me controlling, maybe even abusive. But she didn't see it that way, because in her eyes, structure was justification. I sat back staring at the ceiling. I used to love this house, love the quiet at night. Now it just felt like exile. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was curious. When had we stopped being a team? When did our marriage turn into a one-person boardroom? She'd always liked order, calendars, meal plans, schedules. But this was more than routine. This was a shift in power. And maybe I'd allowed it. Maybe I'd said sure too many times instead of, let's talk about this. Maybe I thought compromise meant agreement when it really meant silence. I thought about our old jokes, the silly names we had for things, the long talks in bed that used to stretch past midnight. Now everything had a tone, a rule, a timestamp. And then a quiet idea surfaced, not out of spite, but out of logic. What if she had to live by these same rules? Not as punishment, as fairness. Would she still find them reasonable? Would she still feel respected? I folded the list and set it on the coffee table. The rules weren't the problem. They were the mirror. And tomorrow I planned to hold it up. I was already at the kitchen table when Megan walked in the next morning, wrapped in routine. No good morning, just straight to the coffee, like nothing unusual had happened the night before. That alone told me a lot. When she sat down with her mug, I slid the paper across the table. Same format, same fonts, same 13 rules. "What's this?" she asked, eyeing it. "My version of the bedtime rules," I said. Her fingers paused on the edge. "You're mocking me?" "No, same rules, just applied to both of us." She opened it slowly, scanned the familiar structure. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then her voice lowered. "These are mine." "Exactly. For both of us? Isn't that what fairness looks like?" The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was puzzled. Her eyes moved across the pages, but this time she wasn't just reading. She was weighing. Something clicked when she realized there was no sarcasm here. No subtext. I'd taken her framework seriously, and that unsettled her. "You match the headers," she said after a while. "You like structure." She studied me, trying to figure out if this was a trap. But it wasn't. This was clarity. She leaned back, still unsure. "So we're co-signing a treaty now?" "I'm agreeing with you. If structure matters, let's share it." A long pause, then to my surprise, she nodded. "1 week," she said. "Let's see how it goes." No resistance, no backpedaling, just agreement. It should have felt like progress, but it didn't. That night, the test began. At 10:03 p.m., I was brushing my teeth when I heard her voice from the bedroom. "Alex, can you bring me my phone charger?" I didn't respond right away. I waited, then called back. "It's after 10. Silence. Very funny. "I'm just following the rules." More silence. When I entered the room, she rolled her eyes and yanked the blanket up. Day 1, first crack. By day 3, things were more obvious. I caught her on her phone in bed twice. Each time, she quickly tucked it away like a kid sneaking candy before dinner. "I'm just checking the weather," she mumbled. "Of course," I replied, reaching for the small notebook I'd started. "What's that?" she asked. "Logbook. You're keeping score?" "I'm recording mutual rule violations. I figured you would too." She didn't reply, but I could feel the shift. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was about accountability. By Friday, the notebook had become part of our evening routine. I didn't wield it with smugness, just calm consistency. At 10:46 p.m. that night, Megan walked through the door after dinner with her sister. "You're late," I said. "Traffic. You set the curfew." She sighed and dropped her purse. "You're enjoying this?" "No," I said. "I'm paying attention." That was the real break. The moment the rules stopped being her tool and started becoming her reflection. At dinner the next night, I watched her scroll through Instagram between bites. "Phone use at the table is rule 4, I said. She didn't argue, just slammed her fork down. "You're turning this into a game." "No, you did the moment you made a list and forgot to include yourself." That quieted her, not because I'd won, but because she couldn't deny it. That night she moved more carefully, put her phone away without being asked, turned out the lights at 10, said goodnight first. Small things, but intentional. I kept logging infractions, but there were fewer. By Sunday morning, the tension wasn't anger anymore. It was thought, her movements slower, her choices more deliberate. She paused before speaking. She scanned for reactions. She'd started living in the system she designed, and it was weighing on her. We visited her parents that night for dinner, something we'd done dozens of times: roast chicken, small talk, wine. But it didn't take long for her mom to pick up on the change. "You two seem quiet," Diane said as she handed out dessert. "We're trying something new," Megan muttered. Diane raised an eyebrow. "New?" "Mutual rules," I said. "Bedtime standards." Megan stiffened. "Curfews?" her dad asked. "Something like that," I said. Diane looked at Megan. "You made rules for Alex?" "It's about structure," she said. "Creating peace." Her dad leaned back. "And how's that going?" She hesitated. Her mom leaned in, softer now. "You used to talk like partners. Now it sounds like a meeting agenda." Megan said nothing. That silence lingered through the rest of dinner. No more jokes, no second helpings, just a quiet that stretched. On the drive home, Megan stared out the window. Then just before we reached the driveway, she spoke. Her voice was barely there. "My mom's right." I glanced at her. "About what?" "I wanted control because I felt invisible." I didn't say anything. I made rules because it was easier than saying I was scared. "Scared of what?" She didn't answer right away. Her hands folded in her lap. Of becoming someone I didn't recognize. We sat in the driveway for a while. She turned toward me. "I forgot what made us work. It wasn't rules, it was choice." I didn't move. But I didn't feel safe choosing anymore. I felt like I was always giving, always adjusting. "And you didn't say anything," I added quietly. "No, I wrote it instead." I nodded, and that was the difference. She'd chosen rules over honesty, and now she was finally starting to see the cost. That night back at home, Megan sat on the edge of the bed holding the rules. She wasn't reading them, just holding them like something she couldn't quite decide what to do with. I waited, standing in the doorway. I didn't push her. I didn't ask if she wanted to talk. After a few minutes, she spoke. "I owe you an apology." I sat down across from her. "For what?" "For thinking a set of rules could fix something I didn't have the courage to talk about." I didn't interrupt. I let her speak. "I was tired, not just physically. Tired of feeling like things were slipping, like I was the only one noticing what was missing between us." She looked at the paper, then back at me. "But I made it one-sided, and when you gave it back to me, with my name on it too, it stopped feeling like structure. It felt like a cage." "I know," I said quietly. "That's how it felt for me on night one." She nodded slowly, and when I saw myself breaking those rules, when I caught myself scrolling, or interrupting, or criticizing, I realized how easily I'd excuse my behavior. But when you did it, it felt like a problem. She set the paper down. I didn't see the double standard. Not really. Not until it stared back at me. We didn't talk long. We didn't need to. That night, for the first time in weeks, we both fell asleep without the tension that usually hung between us. The silence wasn't cold. It was mutual, intentional. But one calm night didn't erase what had built up. The next few days, Megan didn't ask to throw away the rules. She didn't demand a reset. What she did was more telling. She tried, genuinely. She stuck to the structure she had once weaponized, but now she did it without judgment. She paused before speaking. She respected the screen curfew. She didn't snap or correct. She tried, and I noticed. By Wednesday, I'd stopped writing things in the notebook. Not because she was suddenly perfect, but because it wasn't about keeping score anymore. She was showing effort, and that was enough for me. Thursday morning, she surprised me by making breakfast and saying, "No infractions last night, right?" I smiled. "Not a one." She nodded. "Feels better this way." Because it's fair? Because we're trying together. But the real test came that Friday, when her boss called during dinner. We were halfway through the meal when her phone lit up on the counter. I saw her glance at it, hesitate. "It's work," she said. "I know," I replied. Neither of us moved. After a few seconds, she reached for the phone, then paused. "This breaks Rule 4, doesn't it?" "It does." She set the phone down. "They can wait." I didn't say anything, but inside I knew that moment mattered more than anything she could have said out loud. Later that night, we sat on the couch, not speaking much, just watching a show. When the credits rolled, Megan turned to me. "Do you know what the hardest part was?" I shook my head. "Realizing I had stopped listening to you, I thought I was fixing things by organizing them, but I was just making them easier for me." "That's the part that hurt," I said. "It felt like you stopped seeing me as someone worth talking to, just someone to manage." She looked down. "I know, and I'm sorry for that." Her voice was steady, not dramatic, just honest. "I forgot what it meant to relate to you. I just wanted peace, but peace without connection is just silence." There was no list anymore, not physically. It had stayed on the nightstand, untouched for days, but it no longer carried authority. Its power was gone. That night before bed, Megan reached over and tore the rules in half. No speech, no ceremony, just a quiet act of letting go. "I don't want this anymore," she said. "Me neither." We climbed into bed without comment, no deadlines, no curfews, just space to breathe. But the biggest shift didn't come from what we stopped doing. It came from what we started to reclaim. Conversation without agenda, laughter without tension, silence without punishment. There was one more moment that stuck with me. A few nights later, we were both lying in bed, lights off, neither of us asleep. Megan spoke quietly. "Do you think we'll need rules again someday?" "Maybe," I said, "but next time we write them together." She reached for my hand under the blanket. "I can live with that." Sunday dinner at her parents' house had always been routine. Casual conversation, predictable meals, a familiar comfort. But this time, everything felt off before we even reached the table. Megan was quieter than usual during the drive, focused but not calm. I could tell she was turning something over in her mind. It didn't take long for her mother to notice. "You two seem quiet," Diane said, handing out plates. Megan gave a small nod. "We're fine. Just working on things." Diane paused. "Working how?" "We've been using a list," Megan said, avoiding her mom's gaze. "A list?" Diane looked at me confused. "I kept it simple. Rules. For bedtime. Expectations." Diane glanced back at her daughter. "You made rules for Alex?" "I needed structure," Megan replied, her tone firm but defensive. Her father leaned back. "And you applied those to yourself too?" Megan hesitated. That was all Diane needed. "I'm just asking," her mother said gently, "because relationships don't usually need policies." Megan stayed quiet, her fork still. "You used to talk about each other with excitement," Diane added. "Now it sounds like a job description." For a second, I thought Megan would shut it down, change the subject, redirect like she used to, but instead she exhaled. "I thought rules would help me feel in control," she said, "but they didn't. They just made everything feel colder." Her dad nodded but didn't comment. Diane didn't push further either. The message had landed. On the way home, Megan stared out the window in silence. But it wasn't avoidance this time. It was reflection. "I didn't realize how far we'd drifted," she said quietly. "You weren't the only one," I replied. "I kept thinking that if I could get you to change habits, we'd feel closer again. But I didn't think about what I was doing, or not doing. I was frustrated with you, but I didn't ask how you felt. I just issued instructions." "I know," I said. "I felt like a problem to solve, not a person to talk to." That night, she didn't say much before bed. She just lay there, facing the ceiling, the same place where this all began. When I turned off the lights, she spoke again. "I don't want to go back to how things were. Not before the list, not during it. Neither do I. I want to build something better." She wasn't being vague, she meant it. The next day, we both started making small, intentional choices, not because a rule said so, but because we wanted to. I picked up her dry cleaning without being asked. She brought home my favorite snacks. She texted me during the day, not to remind me of something, but to check in. I responded, not with brief answers, but with actual conversation. The notebook disappeared. Not because we agreed to throw it away, but because it had lost its function. The pattern was shifting, not into something perfect, but something mutual. The following week, we re-entered old routines: work, errands, family calls. But everything moved with a new rhythm. The tension wasn't gone, but it wasn't leading anymore. Then came the real test, one of Megan's high-pressure work weeks. Meetings ran long. She came home distracted, tired. I saw it happening, the familiar signs of withdrawal. But instead of slipping back into frustration, she surprised me. Late Tuesday night, just before bed, she sat down and said, "I feel like I'm disconnecting again." I looked at her, surprised by the clarity. "And I don't want to, but I'm falling into the same old cycle. I get stressed, and I start trying to control things around me." I didn't correct her. I didn't remind her of the past. I just listened. She kept going. "So this time, I'm saying it. I need help staying grounded. Can we talk more in the evenings this week?" even if it's just about stupid stuff? Of course, I said. Start with anything. She smiled just a little, but it felt earned. That week, we didn't avoid each other. We leaned in, talked about news, about a movie trailer we both thought looked awful, about how her coworker brought in expired yogurt and acted like it was a surprise. It was mundane, but it was connection. On Friday, Megan came home late again. This time, instead of explaining or defending herself, she walked in and said, "Thanks for waiting up. I know it's past 10. I just shook my head. No rules, remember? She nodded. Right. Just respect. That night we didn't talk much, but the quiet didn't carry the same weight it used to. It felt like breathing, the list, the notebook, the corrections. They'd all been tools, but they were never the solution. The solution had always been this: honesty without performance, mutual effort without a scoreboard. One night before sleep, Megan asked, "Do you think we're fixing it?" "We're changing it," I said. "That's better." 3 weeks after the list was torn up, Megan came home from work earlier than usual. No calls, no texts, just walked in, took off her shoes, and sat down beside me on the couch. For a while, neither of us said anything. Then she asked, "Do you think we're different now?" I thought about it. "Yes," I said. "Not all at once, but the way we're choosing things, how we talk, how we notice each other, it feels different." She looked ahead, quiet. "I still catch myself wanting to take control, especially when things feel uncertain." "That's okay," I said. "I still catch myself retreating, avoiding conflict, hoping things work themselves out." We weren't cured, we weren't finished, but we were aware, and that was the difference. Megan reached over to the side table and pulled out a folder. My first instinct was to brace for something formal. Instead, she handed it to me. "I rewrote the list," she said, "but not like before." Inside were 2 pages. No rules, just sentences, thoughts, values. Each one started with, "I will." I will listen even when it's uncomfortable. I will speak up before resentment builds. I will ask for space instead of shutting down. I will choose connection over control. I read each one carefully. When I was done, she added, "You don't have to write your own. I didn't do this for balance. I just wanted to be clear about what I'm working on." I looked at her. "You didn't do this to set conditions?" "No, I did it because I forgot what it meant to grow inside a relationship. I thought asking for better meant setting expectations. I didn't realize it meant becoming better too." We kept the pages, not as rules to enforce, but as reminders, a reference point. Not for what we had been, but for what we wanted to build. Some nights we still got it wrong. One evening after a stressful day, Megan got sharp with me about forgetting to run a simple errand. I snapped back, more irritated than I meant to be. We both went quiet, but instead of burying it or turning away, she came back 10 minutes later and said, "That wasn't fair. I was frustrated, but I didn't give you a chance." I responded, "I could have handled it better too." And that was it. No scorekeeping, no notebook, just acknowledgement. That was the rhythm we found. Not flawless, but mutual. A few weekends later, we were walking through a park, not saying much, just enjoying the quiet. She slowed down and said, "I used to think keeping things together meant making sure nothing fell apart. But maybe it means letting go of the parts that aren't helping anymore." I nodded, like rigid expectations, like silence pretending to be peace. It was one of those moments where neither of us needed to add anything. The understanding was already there. Later that night, back at home, we lay in bed. No phones, no notebooks, no bedtime rules posted on the wall. Just stillness. I asked her, "Would you have reacted differently if I had refused your rules instead of mirroring them?" She thought for a moment. Probably I would have defended them, gotten more stubborn. And the mirror? That forced me to see myself without defense. That's what changed it. She turned toward me. "Thank you for holding it up without turning it into a weapon. I didn't want to win. I just wanted to be seen." "You were, eventually." I didn't respond right away. I didn't need to. The next morning, Megan got up early and made coffee. She didn't ask if I wanted some. She just brought it to me, sat down and said, "No agenda, just felt like doing something kind." That one sentence meant more than any printed document ever could. In the weeks that followed, we made changes. Not dramatic ones, just small shifts that added up. We scheduled time for each other without needing to call it quality time. We said things like, I need a minute, instead of letting silence build. We learned to check in before stress exploded into blame. And when old habits crept in, and they did, we noticed them faster. Talked about them sooner. We weren't tracking each other anymore. We were choosing each other. One evening, Megan asked, do you ever wish we could go back to before the list? She nodded. No, I said. That version of us needed this lesson. She leaned against me. Same. That night before bed, we talked about things we wanted for the future. No goals or resolutions, just ideas, hopes, shared direction. We didn't need rules for that. We just needed to be honest, early, often, and without fear. And as we turned off the lights and settled in, I realized something. We hadn't eliminated tension. We just replaced the system of blame with a pattern of choice, and that was enough. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel managed. I felt connected, and that's what we were rebuilding. Not control, not compliance, but mutual respect, day by day, on purpose.